Hi, I'm Amy Baldwin, and I am the first year seminar coordinator and senior lecturer at the University of Central Arkansas. And I'm going to talk a little bit about creating buy-in for your course. So, you're going to be asked, I'm sure, by at least one student, one brave student, a semester, maybe a couple over the course of an academic year. Why do I have to take this class? And this can be true of any course that students may take, not just a first year seminar or some sort of requirement. So students are always asking this question, and it's not a bad question at all. Some of it has to do with the generation that is in the classroom now. They really want transparency, they want accountability, and they really want to know what is going on. Why am I having to do this? So there are some reasons for this, and some of them have to do with students wanting a course that really serves a personal interest or larger purpose. So if they are a biology major, they want to go into healthcare, maybe med school or nursing, they're going to see those health-related classes, those science classes, a little differently than they might a philosophy or a writing class because they already have a personal interest and it feeds towards a larger purpose that they have. They also want to take courses, and this is human nature, right? That really speak to them or engaging in some way, and that is going to make them more motivated. And this can work two ways. One way is if they're not personally invested or interested in a particular course's focus or topic, they may be less likely or less interested in doing the work. And the flip side is also true. The more interested they are, or the more we can get them interested in what we're teaching them, what they're learning how to do, that's going to fuel their motivation. And, students, like many humans, really kind of bristle against requirements. And so, if they do not see a clear bearing on their academic goals, they are going to be more inquisitive about what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it. And they may be a little, at least at first, resistant to what we're asking them to do. So, all of this is normal. But I think it also gives us a great opportunity to help develop some strategies to help students become more bought into the course and therefore hopefully more motivated and eager to arrive each day and do the work. One of the first things that I'm going to suggest is that for your course, you create two 30-second, 75 words or fewer pitches, elevator pitches for your course. One can be on the topic or focus, and I think one can be also on the value of a first year seminar. So in our case, since we're teaching first year seminars, those are courses about the transition to college, and those might be that kind of elevator pitch might be really helpful to students who are not familiar with that kind of course. So the first thing that I want you to do, and you can hit pause if you want to participate, is to create that 30-second elevator pitch for your course topic. So think about what is unique to the topic that you're teaching, the focus that you have, and come up with some really interesting ways to kind of express that to students. And remember, 18, 19-year-olds or people new to college may not necessarily have the vocabulary or the experiences that we do, or the love of what we teach. So being really plain in our elevator pitch is probably going to be a better strategy. So the second 30-second elevator pitch that I want you to try to do is creating it for the value or purpose of a first year seminar. And our first year seminars are about helping students with a transition to college. They are about helping students feel more comfortable with the expectations, getting to know other people, including the professor. And they're also geared towards helping connect students with the resources that they're going to need throughout their college career. So I want you to think about how you would pitch that to students in terms of an elevator pitch. And then after you do both of those things, I want you to reflect for a moment and think about what did you learn about your course by doing this process? And what could you use from this exercise? I am not saying that you have to create that elevator pitch and that's got to be the first thing out of your mouth on day one, but certainly there can be some creative ways to embed some of these pieces into a syllabus, into a first module, into a conversation or discussion points. So there could be lots of ways you can use it. And I'm going to show you an attempt that I have made in terms of creating an elevator pitch for my first year seminar, which is focused on memoirs. And we read college memoirs and we do some activities around writing part of their college memoir. So here's my elevator pitch. I think it's fewer than 75 words. What if your first year of college became the book you wish someone had handed you on move-in day? In this seminar, we will read memoirs by writers such as Kiese Lehman and Tara Westover, who are navigating identity, homesickness, ambition, and reinvention. Then you will write your own. You'll leave with sharper reading skills, a stronger writing voice, and an honest record of who you're becoming during the messiest, most formative year of your life. So again, plain English, not fancy. I do hit on a few things like identity and reinvention, but definitely I hope it is accessible to students and maybe spark some interest in them. So here is my elevator pitch for first year seminars in general. And again, those are courses that we're teaching that are focused on that transition to college and helping students navigate that. So that is kind of the secondary purpose, or maybe it's the primary purpose of our first year seminars. We're trying to get them interested in the topic, but also then help them develop these skills that we know will make them successful in college. So here we go. College doesn't come with a manual. This course is the closest thing to one. You'll build systems for managing time and taking notes, learn to read and write the way college actually expects, and practice speaking up for what you need before small problems become big ones. Along the way, you'll develop relationships with professors and classmates and discover the campus resources that make everything else easier. So, not perfect. I'm probably going to tweak them a little bit more, but a good start and kind of helps me figure out what it is that I want to share with students, not only just, before the class starts or the first week, but also throughout the semester. Now I want to talk a little bit about kind of three parts to creating buy-in. And I think many of us have sat through professional development or thought about the first two. And this particular video that I'm doing is more focused on the third, but I don't think you can create buy-in or convince students unless they feel seen, unless they feel heard. And so for students to truly buy into the course, buy into what we're asking them to do, they're going to need to believe that we see them as individuals, not just as seats in the room. And this generation in particular is very, very keen on themselves as individuals. So, you're going to see a lot of questions and concerns about attendance policy. What if I get sick? What if I have an emergency that is going to take me out beyond your attendance policy? They're going to be asking about those late work policies because they're already anticipating, what happens if I, cannot make this and do this the way you want me to. They also want to be heard. And they really want to see that their opinions, their questions, their concerns are genuinely heard, genuinely taken care of. I've made the mistake of kind of being a little dismissive before when students have concerns that I think don't seem to be, that big of a deal. And I've learned the hard way that they really do want to know that they've been acknowledged, and no matter what, and that you care about who they are and what they're experiencing. I think if you can do those two things, then the convincing can be a little easier. And so you've already taken into consideration who they are and what they need, and then you've helped them tie that to what it is that you expect of them. So how can we do that? simple ways, things that you're probably already doing, getting to know them very quickly, learning their names, using their names throughout the semester. I try to do this within the first couple of weeks. It's harder some semesters than others. And one way I do this is to find out something about students that is personal in nature. And sometimes that is just through a pre-course survey or asking them on the first day to kind of share some things about themselves. What do they like to do? What is unique about them? Or just what is their major or career aspiration? And being able to refer to those things, to connect for some students what you're doing in the class to things that are personally relevant to them can be incredibly helpful. Um, you want students to feel heard. You can, and of course, this all depends on how comfortable you are. Ask them for some input in course design. Perhaps maybe you have a selection of readings that you would like them to do, and you ask them early on to choose, their top few. Talk with the class about maybe even the arrangement of the content. When should assignments fall? Helping them navigate some ideas around what kinds of test types do you want, if you have the flexibility to do that. And then even assessment dates. Should we look at assessments before fall break or after? What is going to be helpful to those students, and where you can, giving them some ownership of that. And then here's a strategy that you probably heard before. Provide some opportunities for anonymous feedback throughout the term, but definitely midway to kind of see what it is that they need and how things are going. And then be bold enough to share that feedback and show them at least one thing that you're going to do differently or that you're going to keep doing because of that. And then, what can we do to help them be convinced? Obviously, the elevator pitch kind of primes us for addressing that skepticism early on, and that could be a first day activity. What is this course about? Why do you need to take it? Why is it going to be helpful to you? But I also encourage you to help them connect their academic or professional goals with the course content, with the course outcomes. I have a class that has a lot of reading and writing, and it is about personal experience. And so I can ask students to name what their career aspiration is or their major and get them to make connections with what it is they want to do and why it's important to develop empathy, to learn other people's stories, and then to articulate their own. And then, of course, don't just think it's one and done at the beginning of the semester. You want to revisit the issue at crucial times whenever you think a student's interest might be waning a little bit, or you're seeing some patterns of behaviors in which students are not as engaged as they could be. Perhaps they're not coming to class, perhaps they're not turning in assignments. A great conversation one-on-one around kind of what is going on, and maybe helping build some more connection with it is really, really helpful. One way to do that is through some scenarios, and I'm going to share a link to a worksheet that provides these scenarios. And I'm going to give you an example of one in just a minute. But there is something called the Open Day Challenge. So again, first out of the gate, what is it that they're skeptical about? There's that mid-semester slump when they've been putting effort towards the course or not, and they're trying to figure out what they need to do the second half of the semester. There's the resentful survey response, so be careful if you do offer anonymous uh, survey for feedback that you might get some, negative feedback. How are you going to respond to that? That's going to be what you want to prepare for. And then there's always the student who is never going to buy in. And even though we might not be able to convince them, I think they're useful to walk through what we would say to kind of help us prepare for future iterations of the course. So I am sharing with you one of the scenarios from the worksheet, and the reason I am is because I had a student just like this the last semester that I taught this course. And pretty sure the student did not buy in the whole time. She was highly intelligent, very driven. She had other obligations outside of college, so she worked and she participated in a team sport. So she was, um, somebody who didn't have a lot of time, and she wanted to maximize that time. That's my reading of why she was not bought into the course. Her career field was healthcare, and so she didn't see what reading a memoir had to do with anything related. So I had a one-on-one conversation with her. I do that with all the students to kind of get to know them a little bit better, kind of figure out how they're, doing, what else I can do to support them. And I asked her, have you made any connections between what we're doing in this course and your long-term goals? And if not, what could you see could be helpful to you? And she point blank said, nothing that we're doing in the class is helpful to her long-term goal. So I talked a little bit about the types of people that she might be working with in the healthcare field. And then I talked a little bit about understanding other people's stories and developing some empathy for how they may have grown up, and how that might change how we treat them or how we work with them. And she conceded a little bit. I'm not going to say this was a success story at all, but I think it opened her eyes to, oh, I had not really considered that this course would have any bearing on what I'm doing. I'm not going to write a memoir as a career, but I was kind of working that angle to help her make that connection. What I would have done differently and what I'm going to do this fall is get students to write early on what are their career aspirations and what are some of the skills that they will need to have to be able to thrive in that career. And then I would ask them to map those to some of the outcomes in our course. Of course, if they struggle with that, we're going to do that in class together and kind of make some connections to help students, and then get them to write a short reflection on how they could develop that skill in the parameters of my course. So, something that I'm considering doing, and this worksheet in particular, this scenario kind of helped me think through that. So, I'm going to wrap this up and kind of put a pin in this in terms of what it is that we can do to help create buy-in, but also why it's important. As I said earlier, students are motivated whenever they can connect personally, whether that's through a career aspiration or a personal interest, if they can do that, they are more likely to be motivated to do the work. It also is linked to better student outcomes. The more motivated, the more effort, the more willingness to revise something and think through things, and the more likely that the student is going to do well in your course. It also is going to influence those students who might be shy or hesitant to take risks, to grow and learn, to try something completely out of their comfort zone. And so the more that they can buy in and feel some sense of trust with you and interest in the course, the more likely they are going to push themselves. And we can kind of see that growth and help them with that. And finally, it just makes for a more enjoyable educational experience. Wouldn't it be great to walk into class and everyone is so excited to learn everything there is in the 50 or 75 minutes that you have, that they're clamoring to come back the next time? I know that's a fantasy, but wouldn't that be great if we had that experience every time we walked into the classroom? I know that is the ideal, certainly not the reality, but we find more enjoyment as faculty when we know students are interested and connected. And I think students feel the same way as well. Thank you so much, and happy developing your course. Good luck.